Well, hello and welcome to another edition of the Coronavirus Chat. I'm your host, BJ Murphy, publisher of Neuse and NeuseNews.com, and we have a very special guest here with us today. I'm looking forward to having this conversation today with U.S. Senator Thom Tillis. But first, I want to just give you a few quick announcements, some things to keep up with. The first is the latest on the numbers. Actually, the Senator and I were chatting just a while ago, and he gave you the updated numbers. In North Carolina, we now have 5,553 cases, 350 cases just in the last 24 hours. Unfortunately, we now have 139 deaths across our state. There are 452 that are being hospitalized, and there have been over 71,000 tests across our state. If you're watching, please make sure you like this the broadcast, and please make sure you share it. We want to make sure that we get as many people out, get this information out to as many people as we possibly can. And we're going to have a lot of conversations. I've already seen a lot of questions from you for those watching. In fact, I want to send this out myself. Let's see. Here we go. Sending that out myself. Also, if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to our breaking news text alerts. It is all you have to do is simply just text the keyword NN to 484848. That's the keyword NN to 484848. And you'll get our breaking news text alerts. Not something we do often, but it is something we want to make sure you're aware of. And just last week, we were informed by Facebook that there's a new feature called Facebook Stars. It's in the comments section, and it's just a small way if you want to. As you know, everything we do here at Neuse is free to consume. Our email, the text alert system, this broadcast, and our website, all of our social media platforms, everything we do is free. But if you want to chip in some way, somehow, just to say thank you to whether it's the great job Dr. Travis Town does on the tech side, or a story you like, or there's a comment, just something you want to say, thank you so much for what you're doing. If you don't mind, just click on the stars there in the comment section, something you pay for. Neuse earns a penny. Yeah, you heard that right. We earn a penny for every star we receive. And we just want to say thank you to everybody who's already done that so far. Before we get to our guests, I want to have this special message from Lenoir Community College, which I think is a great message, and that basically is, together we will overcome. And that is true. Better days are ahead. I want to thank all of our friends and partners there at Lenoir Community College. If you have any questions about what the college is doing, or about your schedule, or financial aid, or you name it, please make sure you go to lenoircc.edu. Well, I want to go ahead. I skipped a lot of announcements today because I wanted to make sure that we maximize as much time as we possibly could with our guests. I want to bring up our guest is United States Senator Thom Tillis. He has served in the United States Senate now for a little over 6 years, right about 6 years. Thank you, Mr. Tillis. Thank you for jumping on with us today.
Thank you, BJ.
Well, let's jump right into it. I mean, certainly the hot topic today is the future of the PPP and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan programs. Tell us about your support of the CARES Act and what you see happening moving forward.
Well, I supported the CARES Act. It was a $2.2 trillion economic stabilization package. It has a component for individual assistance, and we're starting to see those bank accounts being credited right now. We'll see checks going out next week. That's just to really bridge the gap for people who have lost their jobs or been displaced. And that's $1,200 per adult, $500 per dependent child. It's not taxable income, and it's not a loan. It's something that we're trying to do to stabilize the economic impact on families. Now, the other piece to the bill have to do with what we do for businesses. The Paycheck Protection Program is designed to allow employers to get a loan. And if they spend that money on paying their employees, then it is a forgivable loan. It's actually a grant, will not have to be paid back. We're trying to keep as many people on the payroll as possible with the expectation that the disruption from COVID-19 is temporary. So we're trying to be best positioned to get back to work. We originally put $350 billion into the account, and as of today, that is fully subscribed. So we've proposed another $250 billion. And at this point, Leader Schumer, the Democratic leader, has refused to allow us to forward with it. We're working today and tomorrow, and we're hopeful we'll do that so there won't be a lapse. There are billions of dollars of more loans that we know businesses need, and we want to get it to them.
I know it's a challenging time for the system because the SBA is really designed to help small businesses, but they've never had this influx of requests or applications, and so the system is really overwhelmed. In fact, I was talking with some colleagues earlier, and basically it's like trying to find somebody who's actually received the approval is really like finding a needle in a haystack. So the idea that this second round is coming is hopeful. But from what I could tell, reading the tea leaves, is a lot of small business owners are really frustrated and they're almost exhausted, and to the point where some of them might be giving up. Any words of encouragement for them as we go through this next round of talks?
Well, first, on the first $350 billion, if you think about it, this loan vehicle didn't even exist 3 weeks ago. And now we've been able to process the banking community, small banks, large banks have processed $350 billion in loans. They've been approved, and the cash should start flowing literally this week and a significant portion next week. But now what I worry about is the businesses who are standing in line, and through no fault of their own, they're being told that they can't move forward with the application until we pass the additional appropriations. I will tell you, I think that taking a position not to backfill the Paycheck Protection Program is a politically unwise and really unjust thing to do for these businesses. We need to get this passed. It's a program that was supported unanimously by every member of the Senate who voted that day, more than 90 senators, and we just need to get it backfilled. Then we can have a discussion about the next phase. What else do we need to do to soften the blow that COVID-19 has had on businesses and individuals?
And speaking of the Senate and voting, it's my understanding that according to the calendar, you're not actually scheduled to go back in until early May 4th, if I'm not mistaken. How do you make exceptions for passing legislation during times like this?
Well, we're technically in session. We have what they call pro forma sessions. So both the House and the Senate, with consent, if we just get members to agree that this is a policy we support, it literally takes less than a minute to pass it out and send it to the president's desk. If Leader Schumer and Speaker Pelosi said they're prepared to do it, we could have it to the president's desk within hours. And that's what we need to do.
So, one little caveat, there was a question that we had that came into our office yesterday about the CARES Act, knowing that you were going to come on, was something, and forgive me, I might butcher the title here, but it was something along the lines of the All Dependents Count Act. And it was basically how to fill the gap for dependents who are 16 above, or college age students who are actually dependents of people who are getting the stimulus check. Do you know where that legislation is, or has there been a workaround to account for dependent college age students?
That's actually something that we need to pass. It's students in the middle ground. Understand, if you're 18 years and you filed taxes in 2018, so say 20 years old, or maybe you were 17 at the time, but you filed for income taxes, then you will qualify for the assistance in its current form. But if you're a full-time student, you don't have a job, you've never had reportable income, that is going to require additional congressional action, and we should find a way to provide that assistance. That is something, that's one of several things we need to do. We need to make sure that organizations like the YMCA are eligible for the loans. Right now, they're not. That also is going to require congressional action, but I believe a lot of these fine tuning of the underlying CARES bill, we should be able to do through unanimous consent. I'm prepared to do it. I hope my colleagues will join us.
And do you have any words of advice or encouragement for the self-employed that they have seemed to have fallen in this crack of not necessarily corporations, so they weren't part of this first round of funding or had a delayed date where they could actually put applications in, and now they're seeing today's headlines where PPP and the economic injury disaster loan programs are out of money. Is there anything that you could say to them to give them some encouragement or give them a piece of advice?
Well, the first thing that I would encourage them to do is to, depending upon the way that they were set up for business, we have greatly expanded the population who's available for unemployment insurance. So in the past, it would just be someone who was on a job and they got laid off or furloughed. But now we're allowing independent contractors and others who historically weren't available for unemployment. So I would, as we're trying to work through the payroll protection program supplemental funding, I would encourage them to go to the Department of Employment Security, the state website for administering unemployment, and determine whether or not they may be eligible for unemployment benefits under the expanded authorities that we gave under the CARES Act. That would include the state weekly amount plus $600 a week provided by the federal government. So that may be one avenue for some, probably not all, but I would explore that. And you have to keep in mind that the Employment Security Office has historically been getting about 3,000 requests for unemployment a week. So say 15,000 over the last 5 weeks. They've gotten over 550,000. So make sure you go on, check to determine if you're eligible. And if you're not successful with submitting your application the first time, continue to do it. And make sure you call the Employment Security website. Or I'm sorry, the phone number. On their website, they have their phone number as well.
Right, and thank you for that. And for those that are watching, we have with us United States Senator Tom Tillis. He's a Republican representing the entire state of North Carolina, actually the former Speaker of the North Carolina House, so he knows a little bit about state government. So I'm going to ask him about that in just a moment. But if you're watching, please make sure, if we have just another moment or two, make sure you ask your question below in the comments, and we're filtering them. If we can get to them, we can. I've seen a couple already, so we'll see if we can get to those before we end this broadcast. Also, if you don't mind, share this broadcast because there's some information. We've already had a conversation a little bit about small business owners, self-employed already. I know those are topics that, based on the comments that I've seen through social media the last couple of days, a lot of people are talking about. So please share this broadcast to help them. And if you see that little thing called stars in the comments, just click on that. You can learn a little bit more about the ways you can help support our team at Neuse. So let me get back to United States Senator Tom Tillis. Speaking of state government, you served as Speaker. I know you had a relationship with now Governor Cooper. So I'm pretty confident your team and the governor's administration have had some conversation. How is that relationship today? And are y'all having a regular dialogue?
We are having a regular dialogue, and I'm spending a lot of time on conference calls with the administration, particularly the folks focused. Mike Sprayberry. I actually had Director Sprayberry on a teletown hall. I've done 20 teletown halls over the past couple of weeks. We've reached over almost 200,000 people on the 1 hour calls so I could answer their questions. And we've done it out in your neck of the woods. We'll be doing it again. I think that Governor Cooper is doing the best that you could expect of him under the circumstances. It's a very fluid environment. You've got new information coming in. He's got to react to it. Of course, people are going to criticize the leaders when they change instructions, but you need to show some patience for the state and local and federal elected officials because we're gathering so much information. And when we see something that's working, we try to scale it across the state and across the country. But I think Mike Sprayberry for emergency management, the governor's administration officials are doing a good job in an unprecedented time, and we've offered to help in any way we can.
Yeah, I've said to several folks since I served during Matthew, I've seen a small taste of some of the conference calls and the challenges that you face in policy. It's very easy to be at home and armchair quarterback a lot of this, and even I'm guilty of that to a degree as well, because you look back and you can see some trends, good and bad, and how policy decisions are made. But you are dealing with a lot of information, and there is this balance of need to reopen the economy because the beauty salons and the restaurants need to get going again, but we also need to protect people's health. And so I can imagine that the stress of trying to balance those two things are really difficult. I've seen a couple of your past. I see one of your past employees and a current one. I saw Dodie Renford join a while ago. So hey, Dodie, and I see Adam Caldwell now. He serves you here in Eastern North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. So he represents you in your interests here in the East. So it's good to have Adam on this as well. A couple of questions that I've seen pour in. One was a question going back to the question about this next phase. And the question is, what is being used as the problems the Democrats have with keeping this fourth phase of I would guess the CARES Act, this next phase, from being passed? What is their challenge? What's the hiccup there?
Well, in some cases, they're proposing that we change some of the underlying bill. In other cases, they're proposing other measures that we need to fully discuss and get consensus on. Now, you have to keep in mind that we had what we thought was a negotiated agreement Saturday, about 3 weeks ago. And on Sunday, we got a proposal from Speaker Pelosi that literally included elements of the Green New Deal, zero carbon footprint for the airline industry by 2025, tax credits for solar panels, and things that clearly we can have a debate over, but they have very little to do with the COVID-19 response. So we need to be very disciplined. And believe me, when we were going through this, we had a lot of Republicans who wanted to propose that we consider this a must-pass bill. We knew we needed to get this bill out. So people wanted to use it as a vehicle for their priorities, but we were successful in preventing Republicans from going beyond what was essential for the COVID response. And the Democrats ultimately agreed. We've got to have that same sort of focus for any measures that we do in the so-called phase 4. And we should certainly be willing to fund the programs that we all unanimously agreed to in the CARES Act. We'll continue to have our debates on other policy issues and priorities, but I think it's dangerous and unfair for us to start changing the rules after we've passed this bill and there are expectations set by individuals and by businesses. We've got to get the care out there. And BJ, you make a great point on hurricane response. You were a mayor, right? And so
yes, sir.
When you're doing a hurricane response and the governor is trying to mobilize his resources, he looks at the storm track, he gets the advice from various people, and he tries to pre-position assets where the data says you need to be first and foremost. Then the storm track changes and you got to reposition. So the governor, the president, I remember vividly, Matthew and myself, you had people calling saying, no, we need it. And you have to step back and say, I know you're doing the best for your local community, but the data right now is leading us in a different direction. The response to COVID is very, very similar to a response to a major weather event. And that's why everything is so fluid and things are changing. That's why it's so important for us to at least have stability with the funding that the CARES Act represents.
And Senator, there was a question a while ago about if someone had this challenge of making this application, whether that's for unemployment or with the PPP, and they're not getting a response, that they don't have an update, they don't even know if it feels like that they're not really sure if it was accepted or not. Is there any type of tip or advice you give people as they go through this and they're seeing the challenge of not really sure if they're even in the system, what they should do?
Yes, actually, you can put Adam Caldwell to work. We're doing a lot of cases in the state. After you've made a reasonable number of attempts, and you should keep trying individually, go to my website at telus.senate.gov. And we're opening up cases. We have cases for businesses who are trying to figure out where their application is with the Small Business Administration. We're reaching out and trying to do a handoff to the state agency for unemployment claims. That's constituent service, and we're doing it. And every member of Congress is as well. So contact my office. You can contact Senator Burr's office or your local congressional representative. And we open that up as casework, and we'll track it down and be in direct touch with you. But these teletown halls that I've done, we've opened up several cases, and we're trying to. We just yesterday, I believe, at the teletown hall, we had one on unemployment insurance. And although ultimately the responsibility rests with the state, we're trying to be another advocate for constituents.
How does someone get a hold or join your next teletown hall?
Well, there's two things. One is if you go to my website, again, it's telus.senate.gov. We send out an alert, and you can go online, listen online, and post questions online. The phone calls, we're reaching out to a universe of anywhere between about 50,000 and 80,000 phone lines. We ask people to opt in. They can listen to the call, and then after about 5 minutes of comments on my part, we literally open it up. If you press *3, you're able to get queued up to ask a question. You ask your question live. But if you go to my website, again, telus.senate.gov, you'll get an alert for when the next town hall meeting is. You can click on a link and you'll go directly into it, listen live, and be able to post questions there.
And I want to ask you a couple of questions about, and we've put a link to your website here so that everybody can go check that out. I want to ask you a couple of questions about the president, if you don't mind. One is this latest conversation about the World Health Organization's funding. Where do you stand on that issue?
I joined in a letter today with Marco Rubio. We sent it to the president saying that we support the idea of suspending funding until we've done an investigation of the value. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars going to this organization. And we have questions about the World Health Organization's role and working with China and getting the information that we needed. And incidentally, we'll be calling for investigations of China. I really do believe that we lost precious time because China didn't share information. They didn't have experts come in and help them with their own situation. And quite honestly, I don't believe any of the reports coming out of China on the number of cases or the number of deaths. They're simply, there are too many examples of where they've misled the public for me to believe that. We just believe a thorough investigation should be warranted before we commit hundreds of millions of dollars more in taxpayer dollars to the WHO.
And this afternoon, in fact, about an hour and a half, the president is scheduled to make a statement about our major announcement regarding the opening of the nation. Do you have any anticipation of what he may share this evening?
Yes, the president invited me to participate in a conference call this morning. He's formed a group of senators who are working on really the economy reopening, the strategy behind it. And I think today, you'll hear him talk about guidance that he's beginning to give the governors to say, use the data, but if you feel like you can safely open segments of your economy, it could be regions, it could be areas where the risk of community spread seems to be relatively low. We need to start thinking about that now so that we can get the economy moving and get people back to work as quickly and as safely, but as quickly as possible.
And one final question, then we'll let you in with a closing statement or two. There was a question I can see some of the comments here in our live feed about this employed college student. So here's the question. Are you saying that an employed college student who is a dependent but filed their own tax return also qualifies for a stimulus check under the current legislation?
I'm not going to give a blanket answer to that. It depends on how you filed your taxes, whether or not your parents claimed you as a dependent. In the instance where you were claimed as a dependent, you may very likely be in that no man's land that we've got to fix. If, on the other hand, you're working at a sufficient level, you filed taxes in 2018 or 2019, you weren't claimed as a dependent, you would be eligible for the check.
All right. Well, thank you for helping to clear that up. And we've taken up plenty of your time. Is there any final thoughts you want to share with the people here in Eastern North Carolina?
No, BJ, but going back to the hurricane analogy, I know full well that you probably gave some instructions to your community that were not very popular. It could have been evacuations. It could have been any number of things that you were doing to protect your community. I just encourage everybody to heed the advice of your mayors, of your county commissioners, of your governor, and of your president. They're not the last thing an elected official wants to do is inconvenience a constituent. When we're asking you to do these things, it's because we firmly believe it could save your life or the lives of others. So let's work, get uncomfortable a little bit, be a little bit inconvenienced, but a short-term inconvenience could make a huge difference in terms of when we get back to work and when we get back to the incredible economy we experienced just 6 weeks ago.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Senator Tom Tillis. Really appreciate your service to our state on behalf of our state in the United States Senate. Thank you again for your service, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, BJ, and thank you for what you're doing. It's very important.
Thank you. Well, you heard it here, folks. Senator Tom Tillis giving an update on the challenges with the PPP and how we see that going forward for small businesses. Also talked about, some if you are experiencing your own challenges with filing claims, how to get in touch with his office, and he's doing these teletown halls. A lot of valuable information here. If you haven't already, please make sure you share this broadcast so others will see it later as we finalize this broadcast. I want to say thank you, a big thank you to everybody who commented, to everybody who asked a question, to anybody who sent stars. Thank you so much for doing that. Really appreciate that. I want to say a big thank you to Aletha Thrower. She's our Vice President of Operations. She's behind the scene helping to manage the social media side of this. Dr. Travis Town, he's our Chief Engineer, our live stream tech, and he's behind making sure all this is worked out. Really appreciate Senator Tillis' team and his network of his team across the state and in D.C. helping to pull this off today. Look, thank y'all so much for watching. We've got some important guests coming on next week. I don't want to share that just yet, but we've already got some commitments from some really great guests. So I really appreciate everybody following Neuse News. If you haven't already, subscribe to our daily newsletter. It's free. It's in your inbox every morning at 7 a.m. with all the day's top headlines. So definitely subscribe to our breaking news text alerts. Text the keyword NN to 484848. And as always, please make sure you wash your hands.